Emily arrived at her childhood home in Vermont on a chilly autumn afternoon, expecting a quiet visit, but the moment she stepped onto the porch, she sensed something was different. Her older brother Daniel, usually calm and steady, paced back and forth like a man carrying a heavy weight on his shoulders. The boards under his boots creaked in a restless rhythm, and he didn't even notice her until she closed the door behind her. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were filled with a mix of worry and urgency, something she had never seen so clearly in him before. Emily felt her chest tighten. Daniel was the strong one, the reliable one, the person who talked others through their storms, not the one who brought storms of his own. He asked her to sit with him, and even his voice sounded different, quieter, shaky, as though he had been rehearsing something for hours and still wasn't ready to say it. "Emily, I need you to keep a secret," he told her, and even those simple words carried a heavy weight, as if speaking them out loud cost him something. She thought he might be in trouble at work, or worried about their parents, or dealing with something ordinary that could be solved with a long talk. But the seriousness in his face made her hold her breath. He asked her to promise first, and she did, because she had never turned her brother away from anything. Still, a part of her wondered what could make Daniel so nervous. The porch was quiet except for the soft wind brushing through the maple trees, and Emily could feel her heartbeat growing louder as she waited for him to continue. She watched him run a hand through his hair, something he only did when he was under real stress. It was strange, seeing him like this, emotionally unsteady, almost afraid of his own thoughts. Her mind raced with questions, but she stayed silent, wanting him to speak at his own pace. The air felt thick, like the moment right before a storm breaks. Daniel looked down at the old wooden steps and finally spoke, but even then, the words came slowly, like he had to pull them out one at a time. "There's something I've been keeping to myself for a long time," he said, and Emily felt a spark of worry growing deeper. She wondered why he hadn't talked to her sooner. They had always shared everything growing up, late-night talks, school secrets, fears they thought were too big for their young hearts. But now, as adults, something had built a wall between them without her noticing. She could tell this secret had been living inside him for months, maybe longer, shaping him in ways she hadn't understood until this moment. Daniel took a deep breath and looked at her with eyes that seemed both hopeful and defeated. "I don't know how to say this without sounding dramatic," he admitted, "but I need you to understand before I tell you the truth." Emily felt a nervous heat rise in her face. Whatever he was about to say wasn't small. He wasn't stalling, he was fighting something inside him. And she could see it clearly now, fear. Not fear of danger, not fear of being judged, but fear of being honest about what had changed him so deeply. She realized then that his pacing, his silence, and the strange tension in the air weren't signs of panic, they were signs of a man who had carried a quiet emotional battle for far too long. Emily leaned forward, trying to show him that he didn't have to handle it alone. "Daniel, whatever it is, just tell me," she whispered. He swallowed hard, sat down beside her, and clasped his hands together like he needed something solid to hold on to before speaking. The porch light flickered gently above them, the sky slowly turning a soft evening blue, and in that stillness, Daniel revealed the first piece of the truth, just enough for Emily to feel the ground shift beneath her. The shock didn't come all at once, it arrived like a wave building strength, hitting harder with every word he said. She listened without interrupting, without breathing too loudly, because she knew that this moment wasn't only about what he told her, it was about how hard it was for him to finally say it. And as the last part of his confession left his lips, Emily understood something clearly: this wasn't just a secret. It was a turning point. The kind that changes a person's life before they even realize it. And she could feel it in her bones. The story Daniel was about to pull her into was only just beginning. Daniel's voice softened as he began to tell Emily about Claire, and the way her name alone seemed to shift something in him made Emily pay even closer attention. He didn't speak slowly the way he had before. Once he started talking about her, his words came faster, as though keeping the memories inside had been harder than he'd ever admitted. He explained that he met Claire during a work conference in Toronto almost a year earlier, a time when everything in his life felt predictable and steady, almost too comfortable. He described how she walked into a room with an ease that made people turn without her even trying, how her smile had a quiet warmth instead of loud confidence, and how her kindness didn't feel forced but natural, like she had been living her life honestly long before they met. Emily remembered noticing subtle changes in him after that trip: late-night walks, quiet reflections, a distracted look during family dinners, but she had never guessed there was a person behind those changes. Daniel told her those few days with Claire had felt strangely real, like they had known each other longer than they actually had, and that even the simplest moments, sharing coffee, walking through crowded streets, talking about their dreams, had felt meaningful in a way he couldn't explain. Emily watched her brother's expression soften as he talked, but beneath the softness, she saw something deeper, something almost painful, as if he was trying to let go of a feeling that had stayed with him long after Claire had gone. He said Claire had opened up to him too, telling him things about her life she didn't usually share, like how she often felt torn between what people expected from her and what she truly wanted. But just when everything between them felt like it was becoming something real, she pulled away. She left with a simple message: "My life is too complicated." Daniel didn't chase her, even though a part of him wanted to. He told Emily that he respected her silence because Claire had seemed like someone who carried her own heavy story, someone who needed space more than anything else. Yet the emptiness she left behind followed him for months. He went back to work, tried to focus, tried to be himself again, but nothing felt the same. Emily understood now why he had seemed lost during those months: the way he avoided talking about his trip, the way he lingered on the porch at night as if waiting for something he couldn't name. But hearing him say it out loud made her chest tighten. She had never seen love affect him so quietly and so deeply at the same time. Then Daniel told her something that surprised her even more: Claire had contacted him again 2 weeks earlier. Her message was short but emotional, telling him she still thought about him, that her life had changed, and that she wanted to talk if he was willing. Emily felt the weight of those words as he spoke them, understanding how much turmoil they must have stirred inside him. She could tell he wasn't just overwhelmed by the idea of Claire returning, he was overwhelmed by the feelings her return had brought back. Daniel admitted that hearing from her had shaken him, bringing back all the emotions he had tried to bury. He didn't sound angry or bitter. Instead, he sounded like someone who had been holding his heart tightly for so long that he didn't know how to loosen his grip anymore. Emily looked at him, seeing the truth clearly now: he had never truly moved on. And the part that shocked her most wasn't that he had loved someone. It was how deeply he had loved her, how much of himself he had given in just a few days, and how strongly those feelings had stayed with him long after she was gone. She realized then that Daniel's secret wasn't only about Claire contacting him again, it was about the way her memory had shaped his entire year, quietly changing him while he tried to live as though nothing had happened. The evening breeze brushed past them, carrying the sound of rustling leaves across the porch, and Emily felt as if the world around them had grown quieter, waiting for Daniel to reveal the rest. His story wasn't finished, not even close, and she sensed that whatever he told her next would pull her even deeper into the truth he had been trying to hide for so long. Daniel continued speaking, but now there was a new tension in his voice, as if the next part of his confession carried a deeper fear than anything he had told Emily so far. He said Claire had not only reached out, she had asked to see him. Emily felt her breath catch for a moment, because she understood immediately how intense that must have felt for him. He explained that Claire had told him she was moving to New York soon and wanted to meet when she arrived, not for anything dramatic, but because she felt their story had never ended properly. Daniel admitted he had read her message over and over, unable to decide whether it brought him relief or confusion. He felt something spark inside him the moment he saw her name again, something he had kept hidden even from himself. But with that spark came fear that revisiting the past would reopen feelings he had barely managed to control. Emily listened closely, absorbing every word, realizing how deeply this situation had affected him. Daniel said he had spent nights thinking about it, trying to imagine how he would feel if he saw Claire standing in front of him again. Would he be angry? Would he be hopeful? Would he feel the same connection that had once felt so natural? He didn't know, and the uncertainty frightened him more than anything. He told Emily he wasn't afraid of Claire hurting him on purpose, he was afraid of what his own heart might do, afraid of losing the progress he had made in trying to move on. Emily could see his hands trembling slightly as he spoke, a sign she had never seen in him before. He wasn't the confident brother she grew up with right now, he was a man standing at an emotional crossroads, unsure which path would protect him and which path would break him. She asked him quietly if he still loved Claire, even though she already knew the answer by the softness in his voice whenever he said her name. But he didn't answer directly. Instead, he said he didn't trust his feelings anymore. He didn't know if what he felt was love, longing, or just the memory of something that once felt special. All he knew was that Claire still had a place inside him, even after a year of silence. Daniel explained that when Claire left, he felt something inside him close off, like a door he wasn't ready to open again. And now that she wanted to come back into his life, he felt uncertain and vulnerable, unsure whether he had the strength to face everything that might come with seeing her again. He said it wasn't just about meeting her, it was about confronting emotions he had avoided for months. Emily felt a wave of sympathy pass through her. She had never heard him speak this openly about anything, and it made her realize how heavy this secret had been on him. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, not physical exhaustion, but the kind that comes from carrying emotional weight without sharing it. Daniel looked at her and said she was the only person he could trust with this, the only person he could talk to without feeling judged. He said he hadn't told anyone else, not friends, not co-workers, because he didn't want advice from people who didn't understand how deeply this situation affected him. Emily understood now why he had struggled so much before speaking. His fear wasn't only about Claire. It was about opening himself up again, risking disappointment, risking hope, risking the unknown. She could see that this wasn't a simple reunion story. It was a quiet emotional battle inside her brother, a battle between wanting to protect his heart and wanting to follow the feelings he had tried to bury. But Emily could also tell he still wasn't done. There was a weight in the silence that came after his last sentence, something he hadn't said yet. She waited, feeling the tension between them grow heavier by the second. And then she saw it in his expression, the look people have when they are finally ready to reveal the part that has been hurting them the most. The real secret was still coming, and Emily braced herself for it, sensing that whatever Daniel told her next would change the story entirely. Daniel stayed quiet for a long moment, and Emily could tell he was gathering the courage to say the part he had been avoiding since the beginning. His face looked tense, not because he didn't trust her, but because the truth itself was heavy. Finally, he took a slow breath and said there was something Claire never told him clearly, something he figured out only after she left, something that changed everything he thought he understood about their connection. Emily leaned forward, feeling her stomach tighten, because Daniel's voice didn't sound nervous anymore, it sounded defeated. He explained that when Claire walked away from him a year ago, she didn't just disappear because her life was complicated, as she had said. She left because she was already engaged to someone else. The words hit Emily like a sudden drop in temperature, and she understood instantly why Daniel had held this secret so close to his heart. He said Claire told him the engagement was falling apart, that she felt trapped, that she didn't know how to tell anyone she wasn't ready to marry the man she had promised a future to. But instead of dealing with it, she ran. She ran from her life, from her relationship, and from him. Daniel said he didn't blame her, but he had felt confused and hurt for months, wondering whether he had been just a distraction, a temporary escape for someone who didn't know what she wanted. He confessed that even though he tried to forget, the truth kept coming back to him. If she had been honest from the beginning, he might have protected himself. Instead, she had left him with feelings he wasn't prepared to handle. Emily watched him stare down at his hands, and she saw how deeply the situation had affected him. He said he never told anyone she was engaged because he didn't want people to judge Claire, and he didn't want to admit to himself how painful it had been. But now Claire was free, no longer engaged, and she wanted a second chance with him. And that was the part that shook him the most. He told Emily he didn't know if Claire had truly changed or if she was simply reaching out because her life had shifted again. He didn't know if her feelings for him were real or if they were tied to the confusion she had been living with when they met. He said he wanted to believe in the connection they had, because it had felt real to him every single moment, but he was also scared that if he opened his heart again, he might end up hurting more than before. Emily saw the conflict in his eyes, a mixture of longing and fear, hope and caution. Daniel said he wasn't asking her what he should do, he just needed someone to understand the weight he had been carrying alone. He didn't want to make a decision out of fear, but he didn't want to trust blindly either. He told Emily that Claire said she regretted leaving him the way she did, that she realized she should have been honest, and that her feelings were real even if her circumstances were messy. But he also knew that words were easy, and trust was hard to rebuild. He said he wasn't sure if he was strong enough to relive that emotional storm again. He felt torn between the memory of how deeply she had touched him and the reality of how much her choices had hurt him. Emily listened without interrupting, feeling her heartache for him. She understood now that Daniel wasn't just asking her to keep a secret, he was asking her to see him clearly, to understand the emotional puzzle he had been trying to solve alone. She realized this was the first time he had truly opened up about something that scared him, something that made him doubt himself. She wanted to protect her brother, to shield him from heartbreak, but she also saw that he still cared about Claire deeply. The evening air around them felt heavier, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel finally looked at Emily and whispered that he didn't know whether meeting Claire again was a chance to heal or a chance to break all over one more time. He said he needed time, space, and honesty, from himself and from her. And then, almost in a whisper, he asked Emily the question he had been avoiding: if someone changed your life once, even if it hurt, would you risk giving them the chance to change it again? Emily didn't answer with words, she simply took his hand, letting him know he wasn't alone anymore. The night around them grew still, and for the first time, Daniel let out a breath that sounded like the beginning of healing. Emily realized that her brother's story wasn't ending with this confession. It was only now reaching the point where he had to decide what his heart was ready to face. And whatever he chose next would shape not just his future, but Claire's too. The secret was no longer just something she had to keep. It had become a turning point that would change both of their lives.